Okay, so this is our final method of inventory valuation. We call this the most recent pricing or last purchase price, and I'm just going to touch on the actual pricing, and we'll do an example of all of the methods at the end here. So most recent pricing method uses the most recent invoice price as the price per unit for all units in that item in the inventory. So what that means is the last price you paid, you're going to apply to all the pounds of flour that are in your inventory. If we go back to that same example, 9A, our most recent price was $23.50 for 50 pounds. So if we look at that, that drops, we calculated our price per pound at 47 cents per pound, right? And we had 140 pounds times 140 would give us $65.80 as our most recent pricing. Now, in this flour example, I know our answers were very similar for all of the different methods. This can change depending on the number of orders or the fluctuation of the pricing between the orders. I have an example here of a typical question that you would see in my class. So we're going to calculate with all four different methods, and we have different delivery dates, October 4th, October 11th, October 18th, and 25th, and different amounts on each of those days. Right? So the first thing I like to do is draw my little counter with my chef so that I can get FIFO and LIFO straight in my head. Right? That's a terrible chef's hat. So what order is going to be closest to the chef? Well, the oldest one, right? So on October 10th, October 4th, we bought 9 cans, 9 at $1.10 per can. And then we bought 9 more cans at $1 per can on October 11th. Notice I'm setting up my shelf just as I would stock it in normal, right? All the newer stuff is going in behind. And then we had 7 at $1.95 on October 18th. And then our newest was 10 cans at $1.45 on October 25th, right? So our shelf is stocked. And we're trying to find the value of 13 cans. So using first in, first out, where are those 15 cans going to come from? Well, they're going to be the actual ones that are left, right? We're going to use up all these ones that are closest to our chef here. So what's left is going to be 15 cans from here. So we're going to have 10 at $1.45, and then we're going to have 5 from this next order at $1.95. So 10 times $1.45 is going to give us $14.50, and then 5 times $1.95 gives us $9.75. We add those two together, and we have a FIFO value of $24.25. That's really hard to see. I'm going to put it next to it. $24.25. Right? That's our FIFO value following how we would naturally use the products. Okay. The next one is our LIFO. So we're going to take our 15 cans out of here. So that means we're going to have 9 at $1.10 and then 6 at $1, which is going to give us $9.90 and $6. And we add those up. 9.9 plus 6 gives us $15.90. That's our LIFO method, right? And like I said in the previous videos, the easiest to remember FIFO, that it matches up with how we would normally use the product. And LIFO is the opposite. Now, why would we have the different methods? That's part of one of your assignments that you're going to have to work on. So you're going to have to do some research to figure out what are the benefits of this. And there are benefits as well as detriments depending on the method that you choose. Now, you can't flip-flop. If you decide to use FIFO in your operation in January, you can't go in February and use LIFO. You need to stay consistent with the method that you're using. Okay, so that was our FIFO and LIFO. And let's erase this, and we'll go into weighted average. Okay, so for weighted average, Let's use the green pen. So we need to first figure out the total we spent on each order, and then the total we ended up with for units. So 9 cans at $1.10, we spent $9.90 on that order, right? 9 cans at $1, we spent $9 on that order. 7 cans at $1.95, we had $13.65. And then 10 cans at $1.45 were $14.45. So our total, we would add those all up. $14.50, no, that's $14.50, not $14.45, sorry. My pen works today. Hello, computer. There we go. $14.50. So my total is $47.05. That's what we spent for all of these cans, right? But how many cans do we get? We got 9 plus 9 plus 7 plus 10. We got 35 cans, right? So 35 cans for $47.50. So to get a price per can, we would divide that by 35 to get 1 can equals 47.05 divided by 35, a price of $1.34 per can. And like I said, when we talked about the weighted average method, this is where a lot of people stop. But think about this. How could these FIFO be $25.25 and LIFO be $15.90 and then weighted average is only $1.34? We need to apply this to the 13 cans. So $1.34 times 13 is going to give us our total value of $17.48. Okay. The last method I want to show you is the most recent or last purchase price. And this is the easiest one to calculate. So if you're trying to remember, I can't remember them all, remember this one. You'll at least get a mark for this one, right? Most recent. What's our most recent date here? Let's go to a different color pen. Most recent date is October 25th. What did we buy? 10 cans at $1.45. So what was our price? $1.45. We had 13 cans in our inventory. So most recent is $1.45 times 13 cans, which will give us times 13, $18.85. So as you can see from this example, there's quite a difference between all 4 of these methods. And like I said, you're going to do some research on your own to figure out what's good about this, what's bad about this, how would this affect your food cost, knowing what we've learned about how our inventory is used to calculate our actual food cost. Okay. So back to the PowerPoint, I just want to touch on the actual cost method. And I mentioned it right at the beginning when we first started talking about all these methods, but the actual cost method uses the price written on each unit at the time of storage. So when you receive your order, you're going to take a price gun or a Sharpie and write down $1.45 on every can that came in, if that's what you priced it at. So when you go to do your inventory, you can look at the can and say, hey, we paid $1.45 for this, and use that to calculate your inventory value. It's a lot of work, and really if you follow first in, first out, you're going to end up with the same value if you're following the first in, first out method, right? Because all of your values are going to match if you're rotating your stock properly, right? So total inventory now. So now we know what our cans of cherries were worth, right? Using our method. We know what our flour was worth using our method chosen, right? Now we would add those totals together to get a total inventory for the closing of our month, right? The inventory value is both the closing inventory value for the prior period and the opening period of the value for the upcoming period. So what that means is, for example, back to my October cherry can example, let's say we use FIFO. So FIFO, we had $24.25 for our cherries, and then we had $65.80, I think, for our flour. So our total inventory is going to be 65.8 plus 24.25 gives us $90.05. Obviously, that's a small inventory, but with our 2 items that we did as examples, that's our total inventory. So this is our inventory for the end of October, our closing inventory for October, but it's also our opening inventory for November, right? So if we go to calculate our food cost for November, we're going to use this value as our opening inventory, and then our new calculation at the end of November for our closing inventory. That's what this slide is talking about. Like I mentioned, total inventory value is going to be the sum of all the inventory items extensions. So how do we prevent inventory theft? Well, obviously we want to have trustworthy, honest people that work for us. We want to make sure that we've got locks and cameras, and I know I had a whole spiel on cameras in a previous video. Those all apply here, right? Expensive items, lock them up. It just controls and removes that chance of things moving. And then a paper trail, right? Create a paper trail with requisitions so that you're requisitioning items and issuing them so you know where product's going, especially in larger operations, so that you can track where those costs are going. And then your inventory quantity. You want to keep it as low as possible without running out of ingredients, right? Or running out of products that you need to serve your customers. And we're going to get into how we measure that in the next video based on inventory turnover.